And we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now, we're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupanuni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it. We have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple, not one jamun, not a drop of water from the Pomeroon, not one sherriga, not one mami, not one guinea, not one whitey, not one sapodilla. We are a peaceful people, struggling we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now, we're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupanuni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it. We have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one jamoon, not a drop of water from the farmer room, not one sherriga, not one mommy, not one guinea, not one whitey, not one sapadella. We are a peaceful people, struggling we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now, we're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupanuni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it. We have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple, not one jamoon, not a drop of water from the farmer room, not one sherriga, not one mommy, not one guinea, not one whitey, not one sapadella.
Being here. Let me apologize for being a few minutes later. It's a busy week, as you know. We have the oil and gas conference in Guyana, and so far it's going extremely well. It's the largest ever held in Guyana, and I think they have over 1,600 participants and representatives from over 60 countries in the world. And if you were to attend, I know many of the reporters are there, you would see the buzz that's taking place there. Not just in the formal sessions where we have a lot of high-level engagements with specialists in many areas speaking about the future of the oil and gas sector and how that can not just change Guyana, but also give impetus to investment opportunities in broad sectors that are not related to the oil and gas industry. I have found a healthy interest in non-oil and gas sectors from many of the participants. I met with literally tens of them who've come in from abroad, as uh, the president met with a lot of the investors, the ministers, our technical staff, because we want to use the conference to draw attention to the rich potential of Guyana for expansion and growth and wealth creation for our people in numerous areas outside of the oil and gas industry. And this is consistent with our approach for economic diversification, with the view in mind that at some stage in the future, the prosperity from the oil and gas sector will decline. And if we want to maintain national prosperity, we have to, in the interim, create the other sectors to fill the gap whenever that happens. Or if we do not do that, we will suffer the same fate like many countries in the world where decline, particularly when they rely heavily on resource-based industries and not value-added activities. So the conference is going well. I've seen the buzz between investors too. There are lots of local companies that are accredited, and they told me they are making a pitch not just for partnership, but also for technology transfer. So I'm sure that the 1,000 odd Guyanese companies that now have a local content certification and are benefiting from about the 700 million US of procurement opportunities per year, that they will also, maybe not all of them, but a significant number of them would be able to grow their business in partnership with others who come in there who may have more capital or know-how, but might find it more difficult to navigate the Guyanese landscape. So they would want to do so with a local partner. This is really exciting. It's not a damp affair. And there's one thing that we pride ourselves on, which that is clarity of our policies. The past government, when they had a foreign company running this oil and gas conference, it was done by a foreign company. Now it's a Guyanese who is running it. They have a secretariat, mainly of women, and mainly Guyanese women who are running the entire conference. And it's done at a level, international level. And I'm so proud of that. But the biggest complaints we heard from people in the, I think, 2 years that APNU did it with the foreign company, that policymakers could not say anything about what they intended to do in the sector. They had no policy to talk about. So they were very scarce there. The ministers would just go and make a speech and disappear, and the speech dealt with everything but policy. Here, if you ask us about any policy in any sector, we had a clear answer for you in the oil and gas sector. Or in education and investment possibilities in education, because a lot of companies came here to look at that. You have a number of AI companies that are looking for opportunities in Guyana. And these opportunities are not limited to the oil and gas sector, because you can use AI now to improve productivity in almost every sector. There, apart from that, you have a huge number of companies that are looking to provide financial services. You heard me speak about the need to drag our banking sector up from its very conservative approach, which may have served us well in the past, and because it lent credibility to the system. But in the new environment, it acts as a hindrance to financial for the rapid growth because the instruments and the new sophistication of the real sector development. They need more innovative financing to make full use of the opportunities. So, for example, more digital banking, discounting. We met with the president of the Afri Exim Bank, and you heard his announcement about $1 billion, 1 billion US dollars that Afri Exim Bank is prepared to make available here, including through the private banking institutions that would allow discounting of bills. This would be a big boost, though, for the local companies that may have a contract with Exxon Mobil, small companies and large ones, and they may have to wait over a particular period for their payment. But they can easily go to a discount facility at a bank and get financing almost immediately on the basis of the contract itself without having to put up additional collateral. This is the kind of thing that happens in sophisticated, mature financial jurisdictions, but is absent in Guyana. And that's why I said we need to step up the game to that level. And I'm pleased to say that we had many such discussions. You have another group that has a financial payment platform which might help us in the future, but they're not. We haven't settled on one, but many people are pitching their services here because they all bring different levels of sophistication. I saw one, a pitch was made to us yesterday, where with a simple app, you'd be able to open your bank account. So for the many people in Guyana now who do not have bank accounts, who, like, say in the Amerindian villages or the riverine areas, or even along the coast, by just downloading the app with an appropriate bank, you can open a bank account without having to go physically present. Just imagine the future that we're envisaging, and that's why we're working on the digital society separately. We don't speak much about it, but just imagine in the future, every Guyanese with a bank account. So all future cash grants could be deposited immediately into your bank account. We don't need to go through the laborious process of cutting a check now and then having people go physically to collect the check, or their pension payments, or their wages and salaries, or for that matter, public assistance, any other payment made by the state, or even private institutions. It will make financial intermediation easy and ease a lot of the burden our people face. That's where we are heading. That's where we are heading. Of course, in the beginning, you have to get good data. And that is why the biometrics that we're collecting from the verification, from the registration exercise for the cash grant now, plus the new ID card that we will issue, these will be the platform on which we can then utilize these financial applications that will lend themselves to, as I say, ease of payment, etc. So it's a lot of things that are happening there. It's not just about oil and gas. Many people think it's about oil and gas alone. People are bringing their new technology for construction methods that would help us in the future in the buildings that we put up, higher standards, cheaper materials, more durable materials that would require less time to implement, like modular buildings. All of those are being exhibited there. I'm so pleased that the Guyanese are there in full force. You've also heard from the president that we are currently exploring a possibility of getting some of our crude sold and then have refined products returned to us, which could end up in a significant cut in the wholesale and retail price for fuel in Guyana, which could have an impact on everyone. You would recall that we removed the 50% excise tax, the PVP government, to keep the prices down. That is why you did not see that. This has resulted in nearly $90 billion of taxes removed, because that is what it amounted to. A 50% tax would be about 90 billion Guyana dollars. We removed that because we did not want it to, the price of higher, the cost of higher fuel feeding into production or into transportation, people traveling. We removed that. But if we now have the possibility using our own crude to bring down the refined prices here and store them, we would have not only energy security in large storage depots right in Guyana here. For example, we probably have about less than 2 months of storage capacity in the country with all the fuel depots. And they have to bring ships in smaller quantities because, small volumes because of these storage depots. So you can't benefit from large ships coming in. That could have a huge impact on production, productivity, transport costs, on inflation. And we're currently examining a proposal which on the face of it seems very attractive to have that done. But of course, we are doing proper due diligence to make sure that whatever we agree to serves ultimately our people, and it is to the benefit of Guyana. That's there. You saw also President Duque, former president of Colombia. He mentioned about the Global Biodiversity Alliance that we are pushing. Guyana is one of the leading players in this. We've been wildly successful at getting our forest carbon traded. We have a reputation globally as the best forest carbon in the market, and that's reflected in the price that we get now per ton of forest carbon, which is about 10 times the voluntary market prices, 10 times more we are getting for 1 ton of our forest carbon. We continue to have successes. We're selling now into a Corsia market, which is a compliance market for airlines. And we think we can replicate that success for biodiversity. So to put on the market instruments not just to remunerate countries for preservation of the forests with the associated benefits for climate, but also to preserve biodiversity, to give them incentives to do so, because there's a rapid loss of biodiversity globally. And if countries can be incentivized to do that, then we can slow down this loss of biodiversity. So we want to work at pioneering again instruments that could be put on the market like we did since 2009 when we launched our first low carbon development strategy. You recall locally people said it's a nonsense. APNU didn't support it. They were opposed to Norway even giving us money at that period. They wrote a letter to Norway to actually stop their resources. And now, because of that early advantage, we're ahead of time. We are reaping the benefits today. Not just the country, but the indigenous communities. As you know, we will now have about 1,700, maybe contracts in those villages done based on, not contracts, projects, done based, financed purely from, the 15% LCDS money that they got, which is already $10 billion. So we're gonna, later this year, they're gonna be the Biodiversity Alliance meeting here, and we're looking to move this along. There were lots of other positive things that came out of the oil and gas conference, but I guess we can talk about that in the future. I'm very, normally I would go through the past week news. Last week I missed my press conference, so like I have a couple of weeks to catch up on. And I'm very pleased that the president last week comes this and he dealt with the issues that I would have wanted to deal with, and he dealt with the city. So I'm not going to belabor those issues, just to express my view. I'm also extremely pleased to see that you had such a lengthy debate in the parliament on a motion for the improvement of the Repentir Cemetery by Valda Lawrence. And you recall almost a month ago, I mentioned that we are now planning to do this. So I think APNU opportunistically put in a motion that we should do it because they think, I don't know, I didn't know that the cemetery was such a big political issue. I thought it was just, something that we had to do as part of our improvement in the city improvement plan. And because when we went to Charlestown, Alboystown, La Penitence, East Romvelt, West Romvelt, and I had community meetings in all those places, people said, when will you fix this cemetery? And we said, we will fix the roads first. And we fixed the roads, and then we will come back and fix the cemetery. That was like a year or two ago. So we had promised to do that. We started in the budget, we put resources to do this, $20 million for each NDC, but so in the NDCs we'll have to focus on cemeteries and that sort of thing, like drainage work and garbage collection. So in Georgetown, we had the Ministry of Public Works go in and look at all the roads. We wanted to start with the roads, and we decided about a month ago that we're going to do the concrete roads through the cemetery and in smaller contracts so we can give it to a number of small individuals. We hope they're not scared to go through the cemetery. You recall Juan Edghill saying that the reason the 4-lane road, he was told that the 4-lane road through the cemetery was taking so long because like the zombies were blocking it, the evil spirit. I'm just joking. I don't want people to say that about Edghill, But we planned this a long time back. We already have like bills and everything. And then I saw a motion in Parliament to debate it. And I say, APNU is playing good politics here because they know it's going to happen. They might as well. It's happening in an area that they think is their base and let them take credit for it. But it's opportunistic. It's very opportunistic and to have such a debate in Parliament. And that happened in the last couple of weeks. And then 2 days ago, I'm extremely pleased that the trial for those who tried to rig the 2020 elections finally, after 4 years, over 4 years, now seem to be on the way. And I hope that the people of the country are following in great detail the anatomy of the rigging. That how planned or unplanned, clumsy or deliberate it was, You would make your own judgment. But there was a serious attempt to rig the elections by the technical staff of GCOM, a few of them, in favor of APNU AFC as the Commission of Inquiry, Independent International Commission of Inquiry concluded, and every international report that has been issued on the 2020 elections from the OAS, European Union, Carter Center, every other CARICOM, they all pointed to the same fact, that there was an attempt to rig the elections. Nigel Hughes believes differently until now. And Norton not only believed that we tried to rig the elections, which is a weird thing, but this week, I was shocked to see that he said that he agrees with Lowenfield's ill-fated, or attempt to disenfranchise over 100,000 Guyanese voters on the basis of his interpretation of what a valid vote is, which the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, ruled that he had no authority to do. So clearly, Norton, until now, agrees not just with the rigging, the attempt to rig, but he also disagrees with the Caribbean Court of Justice ruling. And this is something that tells you a lot. It's the same issue like Nigel Hughes. So he did, when the case, the low-life case was heard, or my witness appeared there, he's still arguing in that case that 34 is the majority of 65, when the CCJ had already ruled on that matter in a very definitive way. So clearly, we have a group of either dishonest or mentally dysfunctional people in this country who can't see that they're the only ones who actually believe that this happened. And I think for politicians, if you're so far from the truth and you believe in all of these weird conspiracy theories, nobody takes you seriously. It's a bit of an advice to Norton and Nigel Hughes, because you're trying to tell the whole country and the world that they were wrong. You were the only person right. And it's better to acknowledge and move on. You know, in 2015, a lot of people, I said this before, in 2015, a lot of people in the People's Progressive Party were saying, look, we lost by 4,600 votes, and we did not get a recount in several of the boxes that we requested. We lost the member of parliament from Region 8 by 1 vote. We should not accept the results. This is rigging. And we said, how do you rebuild the party if you live that, you constantly live that? It may even be true. In this case, it's not true. They tried to rig the elections. Even if it's true, you have to acknowledge that you're out of office and you have to work now based on your vision, which they don't have, or a track record, or your hard work to say to people, I can be a credible government. And that's what we did. We started working back the ground. So for them to stick to this, if you can't acknowledge something as basic as this, then there's no rebuilding. There's absolutely no rebuilding, and they're stuck in that lie. And people see through the lie. Because if someone would lie on something that is so known, so visible, so documented, How can you believe them to fulfill anything else they say, any promise that they make to you? They are proven liars. They believe in the lies and they propagate the lies so openly, then you can't believe any promise they make to you. So it doesn't even, you don't even need to look at their promises because they have no intention of fulfilling them. And this is what I saw in the last week again. You know, they could have just stayed quiet on the trial. They could have just stayed quiet on the trial. You don't need to look so foolish if you're a leader of a party. And that's precisely how they have been looking. So since I'm on Norton and saying about weird things too, like that's coming out from that quarter, the PNC. So I looked at headlines. Norton defends low and field dumping of 115,000 votes. I just dealt with that. Number of cash grant registrants can be used as a gauge for eligible voters. We're not saying that. We're not saying that that's a gauge. The registration is the number and the people on the list. The OLE will be the official list of electors. If you have any objection to people there, based on your groundwork, you should object to the names there being on the list. Norton said they did not want to object because that would help the PPP. How it would objecting to people who are dead or fictitious help the People's Progressive Party? It's your job to help to clean the list. So nonsense again coming out from that quarter. Oh, we didn't object because it would help the PPP. I saw that somewhere. Yes. Bloated list claim. Opposition leader says APNU not submitting objection since it will benefit PPP. That is how you clean up the list. You clean up the list of dead people. We've asked that GCOM clean the list by formally approaching the GRA as a project, that they get all the names of the people who died since 2008 when the list was first started, the continuous registration. And I know they've removed some names. Share the names with the opposition and the government, publicize the names, put them in the newspapers, put them online, let people examine them. And then if there are no objections, people go through, then remove all of their names from the list. We said that's how you can clear the people who are dead from the list. If there are people who are fictitious, or even now APNU can object to dead names. But as the Chief Justice said, you can't object to Guyanese if they're migrated once their names are on the list, but they can't vote. They have to come back and vote. So it's as simple as that. But this nonsense about they can't object because it would benefit the PPP. Then Mr. Norton said he is happy with the advice that he gave to people in Mocha. How could you be so callous to say that? Now, I think the president dealt with this extensively, and you all saw the Chief Justice ruling on the matter. It was adequately aired in the public domain. But they misled a small number of people who were squatting there. Chief Justice pointed out they had no prescriptive right to the land. They had no title to the land. They were squatters. That there was an offer by the government, not like the PNC government, where they would go and throw people off the road just like that. We offered to assist to find plots of land for people to go elsewhere. And I think the president has made it clear, even the ones who did not succeed in the court now, we are still ready to engage them. Although they took the route of going to court, they're not eligible for anything now, but we would still want to work with them to see that they are accommodated elsewhere. Because that's the nature of the government that we run. We've always been like this. That to ensure we needed it for public infrastructure. Look at that road now benefiting our country and tens of thousands of people. And we didn't throw people off their land and left them homeless. We worked with them, although they did not have any rights to the land. They didn't have any rights, as the Chief Justice proved. They misled those people. And this is typical of the PNC. It does this over and over and over. It does it with protesters. It did it with the polling agents. Remember, 2,500 polling agents worked for APNU conscientiously in 2020. And when they went to the recount, they said, because those polling agents signed the statements of poll, the accurate one. After the count, they said the PPP bribed those people to sign the statements of poll. Imagine the 2,500 people who worked with them in 2020. Many would have been supporters of their party. Now faced with a charge that they were bribed by the PPP to sign the statements of poll. They throw people under the bus all the time for their political objectives. They didn't care about these individuals. They didn't care about them. Thankfully, the other people in Makkah, the 140 others who were there, who work with the government, they did not succumb to this propaganda and to the stupidity that they were peddling on the ground, Nima Flubes and Norton. But a small group fell prey to the propaganda, and now they suffer the consequences. But as I said before, this is not a unique thing to the PNC. They do this all the time. All the time, they leave people, hang them out to dry. They push them to do things that, for political purposes, then hang them out to dry. Never will defend the people. And now, imagine the callousness of this all. How heartless can you be to say, I'm happy with our advice? This is what Norton said to the squatters in Makkah. He's happy with the advice. Now they have a huge cost to pay, legal costs. Who's going to pay the legal costs? Would Norton pay the legal costs for the squatters? Who will pay their legal costs? And what if the government says, oh, you went to court? Well, the others who didn't go to court, we worked with them, they got their land. You forget it. But we're not going to do that. So they have done this many times. Mr. Norton also had some rhetoric when I was abroad. I saw something saying, oh, the PPP is planning to rig to get a landslide. Not to rig. I heard them they're all mentioning landslide. We don't mention landslide. One group mentioned, oh, they have to intervene to prevent us getting 2/3 majority. We will win the elections. We're not predicting 2/3 majority and all of that. We will win the elections because of our work, because we are approaching Guyana as a national party, the People's Progressive Party, because we are treating all of our people equally, regardless of their race, their religion, or gender. We're making a serious attempt to cross racial divides in Ghana, historic racial divides. On a daily basis, we do this work because we're genuine about it. And we want all of our people to progress. That's why we will win the election. He said we are planning to rig the elections to get that, and they will win. Now, you have to be extremely deranged to think that, much less utter it. Much less utter it, because, again, nobody believes him. Can you imagine walking into an APNU stronghold and said, Norton said the PNC will win the elections? Even they don't believe that. They don't believe that. They would say, this guy must be smoking something. And then he threatens violence. He threatens violence, which is a historic thing of Norton. I don't take him too seriously. He's always done that, this bravado, trying to sound like a strong person. If he breaks the law, he's going to face the consequences. But when they threaten violence, often, you know who they use? Small people, and hang them out to dry again. The leaders get tucked away nicely. They're doing the thing, and then utilize people. But people are wise to it. It happened in 2020. Remember, they threaten all sorts of things. They're going to bring out 10,000 people on the street to protest in front of GCOM. And then I looked at the protest in front of GCOM, in front of the Ministry of Finance in the 5 months period. And then all I saw is like 100 people who are like probably pensioners. So they threatened it before because people are wise now to all of this. They've seen it, they've used that playbook over and over again. Now people are busy getting a job, and if they don't have one, they can find one because there are opportunities. They're busy trying to get their house lot. They're busy trying to get a scholarship. They want to do things to change their lives. And that brings me to the vile comments that were made by the WPA, Hines, about Afro-Guyanese. And Norton refuses to condemn it. How can this is what he says. I have no control over what he says. And then in the article, he said he didn't look at it, really. He didn't hear it too much. So he has no control what Hines says, but he didn't really hear what Hines said. Here's everything under the sun. Here's everything under the sun, but couldn't hear this vile sort of abuse of Afro-Guyanese. And where are the TIGI and the red threads and all of those, the conscience of the society now? Where they didn't say a word. So these people are from a different era. Now, David Hines was part of the last government. David Hines had a cushy job. He and all the WPA people, the few of them they have, who betrayed Walter Rodney, because the PNC killed Walter Rodney. That's the finding of a commission of inquiry report. The PNC killed their leader, one of the leading scholars in the world. They snuffed his life out, bombed him. They killed him because he dared to speak up against the dictatorship that the PNC had at that time. They were fearful of him. And these people today They forgot all of that. I think they were the ones who probably betrayed Walter Rodney. But that's history. We don't need to go back to that history. In the 5 years that APNU was in office, the entire small leadership of the WPA had very cushy jobs. They were working for super salaries in agencies like the SARA or somewhere else. Almost the top leadership was working there, and consultants, etc. What did he do? Did you once see David Hines speak up for jobs for Afro-Guyanese, or for that matter, Guyanese? Well, forget Indo-Guyanese and Amerindians and mixed people. They don't exist even in the minds of these racist guys. They don't even exist. Mixed people and Indo-Guyanese and and Amerindians don't even exist. They're like from a different universe. So they're not human. So they must, not treat them well. But what did he speak up for Afro-Guyanese? When APNU took away the children grant, did he say, all right, just give it to the children, Afro-Guyanese children? Or give it to all the children, but particularly there? They took it away from children there. When they didn't give a single house lot to anyone in Region 10, but gave Lowenfield 215 acres of land there that could have built 1,000 house lots. What did he say? Where was the advocacy for land for Afro-Guyanese? When the people were losing jobs in drove, where were these people? So now he wants Afro-Guyanese to reinstall them because they own Afro-Guyanese. That's what he's saying. If you ever stray from us, you're then subjected, you got to be a soup drink. I don't even want to mention the words are so violent that he mentioned there. But you got to be really a sellout because you belong to us. But belong to us only as a vote bank to put us in office so we can enjoy the benefits and we can treat you like dirt. That is because that's precisely what they did. You check around the country, check even the contracts. You have more Afro-Guyanese small businesses now than when they were in office and getting contracts, and big ones too, getting contracts. So never mind all of that. You must stick with us. So you have to be peculiar. So you have to be unthinking. You just have to stick with them to get them in power and to get them enjoy the benefits. Now, a lot of people who are coming to us are doing so not because they're selling out anybody, because they're smart people. They think for themselves, young, bright Afro-Guyanese and older ones too. They're smart. They think for themselves. They believe in making choices for themselves. They're ambitious. They're persuaded by arguments. They can think logically. And when they apply all of these skills that they have, what conclusion can you come to? Because look at the track record of the two parties. After 28 years in government, we became poorer than Haiti. It wasn't poorer than Haiti for Indo-Guyanese alone. It was poorer than Haiti for all of us. We all suffered. And then in the 5 years, you didn't do much better. So they have to conclude you have no track record to speak of. And secondly, when they listen to the statements that they say, They have no vision for the future. They can't give a coherent view on the oil and gas sector. Both APNU and AFC, they're saying when they come into office, they will review the PSA, then they will think about what to do. Compare that with the PPP. When we're out of office, we laid out our plan, we are implementing it. They can't tell you much what they're going to do. Now, on one, they want to double the children grant. After taking away the 10,000, we increased it to 50,000. Norton said we'd double it 1 week and then later link it to attendance at school. Another week. They're just all over the place. All over the place. No clear vision. As I said before, they want to distribute $1 trillion from the oil and gas sector. And we're collecting 500 billion, half of that now. And their proposal that they put out in the public domain is to distribute 1 trillion, not leaving out infrastructure. They're not going to spend on infrastructure. Listen to the oil and gas conference, people talking to specialists about how infrastructure is crucial for the future growth. They don't think that long term. So why would a bright or a person who is thinking Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, Amerindian want to be associated with you? It's not because they're sellouts. It's because they're thinking people, smart people. They believe in freedom and they have choices. That's what our Constitution does here. So you can't continue by racism or beating them down or disparaging them or calling them names, vile names, force them into supporting you. And then even if they support you, you do nothing for their cause. That is precisely what these guys want to do. It's your track record. It's your lack of vision. It's the thing about young people. Why would a young person ever want to support the PNC? Look at the track record of the People's Progressive Party on young people. Look at the young ministers who we brought in. Look at the presidents in the past. We had ministers in their 20s. We had ministers in their 20s. I became minister in my 20s, Irfan Ali. In our 30s, we had presidents in our 30s and 40s. The thing is that is how we support young people. We just had 1,500 young people of every race join the People's Progressive Party Youth Arm. Because they see that in this party, you can rise to the top through hard work. And we have demonstrated that, not by race or religion or anything. If you work hard for the people of this country, that's the kind of party you want to engage in. But that's what we're trying to sell. We're saying, come to us because we're a party that works for everyone. We want to get you a job. We want to get scholarships for people. We want to get better health care, education. On the other hand, they're selling, oh, you got to support us your whole life. And if you don't, then you're a sellout or the vile thing that he said about people. How could you? And that is what Norton would not disassociate himself from, or Nigel Hughes. They support this strongly. They would not disassociate themselves from it. And that is why people are tired with this sort of rhetoric. It's the vilest thing I've seen for a long time. And people like, what's his name again? Christopher Ram likes to file cases. Why he doesn't file a case here now against him in court for disparaging Afro-Guyanese like this? It's an assault on people, assault on their integrity, their intelligence. They think that people, Afro-Guyanese, are like sheep or unthinking. They're some of the smartest people in the world, and well, not the world in Guyana, Afro-Guyanese. But the thing is that, and that is what they get for it. And the leaders of these parties will just not say anything about it. So it was disgusting. I saw it. I was abroad. I wanted to comment on it immediately. because it was so vile. But I hope this is not the end of it. We gotta banish, not by sending people to jail, but by the weight of society, these fossils from who would only use people's race to judge them from our midst. He's lucky we have a tolerant democracy. He's lucky. We have a tolerant democracy. Now, I saw a lot of issues about the transparency issue, and I think Minister Teixeira and the President addressed these issues. But we have been here before, and we had to deal with this. This is almost every year this comes up. So it's nothing new. I hope that people would have looked at the entire report, some people. So here are some facts. So they said we slipped 1 point down. But in this report, it speaks about, this is the report, you can get it on the site. It has significant improvers. So Guyana, Dominican Republic, and Uruguay have been the significant improvers in Latin America. So we are the 3 countries that came up as significant improvers, starting from 2050. And I'll come to that in a minute. The significant decliners, this is the 2024 TIGI report. Significant decliners, the United States of America is here, went down 11 points, lower than Venezuela, which went down 8 points. So they're saying the United States of America declined more than Venezuela, that Canada went down at the same rate as Venezuela, 8 points. So, and these are supposed to be the democracies, the countries we look towards for a view on whether we are doing things well. I don't believe we should, but that is how people process it here in Ghana. So the United States, in the same, when we had in this report, the same one that you're hearing all APNU talk about, and say, yeah, they agree with the TIGI report and all of that, not Transparency International report and massive corruption. We're seen as an improver, significant improver in the region. One of the 3 countries that had significant improvement. That's what it's described as in the report. And significant improvers, and the significant decliners include the United States of America and Canada. And both Canada and the United States declined as low as Venezuela, or one even worse than Venezuela. Now, you ask President Trump if he agrees with this. They should go and ask the US administration. In this year alone, on 2024, the US slipped by 4 points. So that was under President Biden. And they said the courts in the United States, they criticized the courts in the United States of America. Now, the United States of America, with all of its difficulties, is still one of the biggest democracies in the world, the greatest democracies in the world. And people value free speech there in the United States of America, and they practice it and they defend it. The Trump administration not only defending free speech in the US, but you should listen to J.D. Vance's speech at the Munich conference, a defense of free speech. And with all of the complex systems in the United States of America in their judiciary, it's still seen as one of the best in the world. But they lost 4 points on the index. We slipped 1 point. They lost 4 points on the index, slipped 4 points because they complain about some in the judiciary in the United States of America, the same TI report. So often you have to assess these reports in perspective and in their full complexity. Here, it's easy to pick one word out of the report and say, look at how Guyana is performing here. So now that that is the report itself, you would recall that in 2019, we had an improvement on the APNU, an improvement in the index. And when that report came out, I pointed out how the global index could be influenced by reports sent from Guyana. So in the 2020 Transparency International Index, there was a link, and you can go and check it now. It's still there. If you press the link, you will find the local report that went from TIGI, the local group, who was headed by Troy Thomas at that time. And here, I'm not going to go through this. You will have a chance to see it. But in 2019, this is what Troy Thomas put in his report to Transparency International, that they use as one of a basis for the improvement that we saw. He said, in recent years, though, there's been a measure of optimism about the potential for a turnaround. This is strongly linked to a change in government that occurred in 2015. So this report was sent up in September 2023, 2019. It didn't mention a single word about the no confidence motion. It didn't mention a word that the government has refused to go to the elections and respect the Constitution. It didn't mention a word about the CCJ ruling, which came in June of 2019, saying that the government had fallen and they should go to elections and they were in a caretaker mode. We're in September 23rd, 2019, we were protesting for free and fair elections, pushing the government to call the elections, and they were refusing, defying the Constitution and the CCJ ruling. Not a word about that. Now, this is transparency globally, not a word about it in the report. So that's it. Here are some other elements of the report. There have also been a number of positive steps taken by the new government, including making petroleum contracts publicly available. I don't know what Kaishore News would have to say about that, but you recall we were fighting to get for 2 years. They did not release the 2016 agreement that was signed. But in this report from the local chapter here, TIGI, the Transparency International sent there, they said the government was making petroleum contracts publicly available. Now, not only they did not release that, they hid the signing bonus. They didn't mention a word about the signing bonus, which the government hid, and at that time they refused, contrary to law, to put it into the consolidated fund. It was illegally held outside the consolidated fund. 18 million. Not a word about it. Not a word that it was only when we got into office that we then posted all the field development plans to the website for all the projects that were approved so far, and also the environmental permits. And that is how people could have compared their mediocre environmental permits to the robust ones that we have had now issued, because they reposted all of these on the website. But this happened only after we got into office in 2019, September. This is a lie from Troy Thomas, TIGI, the local chapter, saying the new government, including positive steps by the new government, including making petroleum contracts publicly available. Blatant lie that went to TIG, the Transparency International. Dismissing employees found guilty of corruption. I can't recall much of that happening. Which employee did they dismiss because of corruption? In fact, you had entrenched corruption. You had ministers taking contracts for themselves in that period. Ministers giving themselves contracts like their family members. In housing, it happened. In Cathy Hughes did it. You had unsolicited bids going to cabinet. None of that. Another lie, dismissing employees found guilty of corruption. The third, in their report, halting a major contract for parking meters in the capital city. Who approved this? It was Vulcan who approved it. They said the government stopped this. This is transparency into local group again, sending up a report. The people are not here. They rely a lot on these local guys, many who are opposed to the PPP, and I'll come to that in a minute. So they said another blatant lie there. Then reestablishing the Integrity Commission. Now, you would recall in 2019, when this report went up, that there are 3 years, 2015, 2016, 2017, where no reports, for the first time in our history since the year 2000, no report was filed by anyone in government for today. Integrity, well, anyone for that matter. But no minister, the president, did not file a report contrary to the law in those 3 years. And that defied what happened before. Every year you had to do this by law. In those 3 years, nothing happened. And imagine, they said, reestablishing the Integrity Commission was a positive thing for the new government. I can go down, updating the code of conduct for public officials. What code of conduct for public officials? Blatant lies that they sent up. Now, establishing a state asset recovery unit. They didn't recover a single thing. They didn't recover a single thing. In fact, they spent 10 times more money than anything they recovered. And it was a place for the political rejects and cushy jobs there. Clive Thomas, a whole range of people were there. I think Trotman was there. Even the chief economist of the PNC now, Elson Lowe, was a research assistant at SARA. And he's now the chief economist there. So how do these indices, or how are they composed, and where do they get their record from? Often it's the local people. So I just demonstrated to you how in September of 2019, the local group sent up a report to the international group, and they published that report along with their ranking. And we saw an improvement on the basis of the lies told in this report. Now, that report came out before the elections. It was January of 2020, based on this information. This was sent in 2019. Thereafter, the PNC, we discovered that they spent 419.5 billion without parliamentary oversight. Nothing that they can say about us now, anything they can say about us now would pale into insignificance compared to that in a global standard. 419.5 billion without parliamentary oversight. That was not commented on in the 2020 report because we discovered it when we got into office. No parliamentary oversight. The stealing of the elections. That's key to transparency. They tried 5 months to steal the elections. I talk about a no confidence motion. Nothing there. Not adhering to constitutionality. The tender board didn't say anything about the breaches throughout that period, including not complying with the law of posting the contracts. The transfer of thousands of acres of land, including title to the land, without any payment or any public procurement process. All of these things were not even mentioned. And so when I talk, APNU talks about transparency and TAIGI and all of the others. Now, what I would like to find out is nobody knew in Guyana when this report went up from TIGI. They didn't publish it here. So the media didn't know. We didn't know. It's only when Transparency International posted it as a link we knew. So if you are a transparency organization in Guyana, you have a duty to put a report, if you're putting together a report, and publish it locally and say, we're sending this report up, so that the people of this country would see it. I wonder if they sent up a report. I'm wondering now what report they sent up. And trust me, I would not put it past them because they're hostile to the PPP, to again send up a negative report, like how they whitewashed the whole APNU period based on what I just said in 2019. This is a group of people who are hostile to us. So for example, and now I've seen Gulsaran coming forward, and Gulsaran is a big apologist and a blatant liar for what he's trying to make it seem. Why APNU? That APNU did a number of things that caused their improvement. Nothing to do, so he's fabricating things, for example. He talked about the amendment to the anti-money laundering law that the PPP refused to do in the period before 2015 that was done under APNU. We didn't. You recall what happened? APNU had the majority in the parliament. APNU AFC were the majority in parliament. They frustrated any attempt to amend the anti-money laundering law. Just go back and check that. He says, oh, that was one of the reasons why they had an improvement in their period. But they whitewashed all the wickedness, the TIGI that took place in that period. I shudder to think if they had taken those issues into consideration, where we would have been on the index now. The egregious things I mentioned earlier, because they were whitewashed. But now, apart from whitewashing APNU's track record, they're trying to invent positive things for APNU, why they had an improvement, APNU AFC. So this first excuse that he made in the Stabroek News, which gives him a platform, is that we didn't want to do this. They blocked any amendment to the anti-money laundering law because they wanted to force the country into a crisis at that time, as they did with cutting the budgets. They cut $90 billion from our budget in the period for Amerindian development, and for everything else, because they control the parliament. We could not pass anything in parliament, the PPP, because we didn't have the majority. He forgot that. Secondly, he said that the public procurement, they brought into being the Public Procurement Commission. And you know why the Public Procurement Commission came into being? Because in opposition, they were saying they should get 3 of its members and we should get 2. And we said, no, the government should get 3 members, or 3 members would be recommended by the government and 2 coming from the opposition. And they refused to budge on it. All the years we've been in office. So what changed in 2015? They became government, and we said, you are entitled to recommend 3 because you're government now. And we're opposition, so we would recommend 2. That is changed because of our position. That's how it came into being. Not because of APNU loving it or anything else. And the same Public Procurement Commission found a breach about what did they do? Patterson. When he took this unsolicited bid and spent illegally, they spent nearly $160 million that he's charged for now. So again, a distortion here coming from Gulsaran. They established special organized forensic audits were done at 4 institutions, and special organized crime unit started looking at this. That was one of the reasons for the improvement. Guess what happened with the forensic audit? You know, Gulsaran is on record as saying, I love transparency. I'm the conscience of things transparent in the country. And I'm sure he has something to do with the TIGI now. So that's why I wouldn't put it past him to send a negative report up. So he then said, after I was critical, he sued me for saying he doesn't have any integrity. And I want to go to court to prove it. And I'm going to prove it in court. So he then said, this is how I got the forensic audits. I got a call from the minister one evening, and the minister said, we're doing some forensic audits. We're doing some audits. And we have a list here. How many would you want? Which ones? Now, bearing in mind, when I was minister at that time, we passed an amendment to the Act, which says that audits can only be done by the Auditor General or authorized by the Public Accounts Committee of the Parliament, not by the Ministry of Finance or the Minister. It's illegal for that to happen. That's the law of the country. He knows it well, but forgot the law conveniently at that time. And the minister called him and said, how much, which one you want? And then he called back the minister the following day and selected which ones he wanted. And he got tens of millions of dollars to do these audits. He was picked because he was close to them. He was the same. So this is how, and someone who says these things must be publicly tendered. There was no public tender for these audits. Now he's elevating that into one of the reasons why they went up. Then he spoke about, I need to go through this all because it's in Starbuck News. And one thing, if you don't respond to it, this false narrative persists because it's in print. That somehow people will think that, yeah, there were real reasons why APNU improved in the index, not because of the lies they told. That's why I'm going through them. He mentioned the Integrity Commission report again. They named the chairman. Forget to mention 3 years gap in integrity, the submissions to the Integrity Commission. Then he said that they did the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Now, I have a document here that 2009, if you look at it, it's a joint concept note. You would see that under the EU flag with the arrangement with Norway, we made a commitment to join EITI since then, and we were working on that process. And the same thing with the EU flag. This is a commitment we made since then. Look, it's in this document, 2009, the joint concept note that we had with Norway. You can find it here. He said APNU did it. That's one of the reasons why. Another lie. And then the enactment of the now repealed Natural Resources Act. So the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which they went to Parliament after the no confidence motion, when Parliament should not be meeting because the government had fallen, and passed a Natural Resources Fund Act. And he touts this as one of the reasons why they did this. There are a couple of other minor things he mentions here. It's a blatant lie. So whitewashing in a healthy dose by people like Gulsaran. So I wonder what connection he has now with TIGI. He would whitewash this, and I wonder if they sent up a report that the country has not seen, like they did in 2019, that would lie about everything. So when I look at what they said about Guyana, it's minimal. They talk about, so I clicked on just the header which says captured by political elites and or elites in Guyana. And then I clicked on the link, and it takes you to this site, which is called Inset Crime. And Inset Crime is talking about the same things we know about, gold smuggling, that is it, but that's it. Mercury smuggling, some drug trafficking, but not a single mention about or how much we're getting and intercepting, etc. And it speaks about the corrupt judiciary. I wonder if the people in the judiciary here have something to say. Inside Crime found that judicial bodies are involved in corrupt activities without naming anything. I wonder what they think there. And for example, mining groups and their political acolytes have co-opted these institutions in their favor. So that is what they're talking about, capture of state institutions and benefiting from illegal things. Overall, I think the report is a damn script. I went into it in great detail to show you about these NGOs, the Red Thread type and the human rights bodies, these one-person organizations or fossils that are linked to party, or people like Gulsaran and the TIGI group that historically are against the PPP. They would never show all the improvements that are done on the PPP. Every system you have, from the Procurement Act to the anti-money law, to the banking legislation, to New Companies Act, I can go down a long list, were done under the PPP. In the period under APNU, we had a period where policy was not done. We have vastly enhanced the framework. And so even they had to acknowledge this, that the framework has been phenomenally strengthened in even Transparency International, but it's a compliance with the framework. That is an issue. So I just thought I needed to do that a bit because I wanted people, we're not sensitive to these issues. They're never going to win over the TIGI or so. They're hostiles to the PPP or a fossil like Gulsaran, like Gulsaran. I'm waiting for the court date to prove that he lacks integrity. So, but we needed to address some of these matters. There are lots of other things I wanted to talk about. Maybe I saw Nigel Hughes. My staff said to me, I don't watch it. So he started his press conference. Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. I'm sure you're paying attention this afternoon. Don't flatter yourself. I can't bear to watch stupidness. You know, my staff, maybe one or two of them would watch and to give me a report, and they often add to the few viewers that they get, you know, because I think some of our people just watch for a comedy show. Well, but I just needed to speak a bit about the land issue. I have a headline somewhere. I should have it here among my paper. I just printed it out. Oh, this is a rich one from Kaichor News. Well, my dear friend Glenn Lal, I don't want to call him criminal. I use that for Rickford Bork alone to get under his skin, but he is also another criminal. So after I spoke about Nigel Hughes and the land issue, the next day, VP Jagdeo tries to compare 75 acres of jungle lands Nigel Hughes wants to acquire with 35 acres of prime city land sold to Eramada and others. Mislead nation that the AFC leader had acquired the lands. So let me go back through. And then I saw the same thing in Starbuck News, but more sensibly, but with their bias, of course, trying to cover up Nigel Hughes, give him a free pass, but with more finesse than the crudity of the Kaichor News. So let me go back for a minute and see who's obfuscating and who's trying to deflect attention. There were two statements made by Nigel Hughes. One, that we were selling land to Eramad at a preferential price of $30 million. And secondly, and he released a part of an agreement, creating the impression, I think, that it was $30 million for the whole plot. Nevertheless, that was his statement. The second one he made is that the government should not, this is election year, should not really enter into serious contracts because it's election year. Maybe dispose of land, etc. Those are two statements. So he started the conversation on land policy. I came here and I said, let's talk about land policy when Nigel Hughes and his party were in government and here Apnu. I pointed out first that in the Ogle Providence area, that same area there, that in the 2 years after the no confidence motion, they allocated more land, transfer titles to a lot of the land without even collecting the money than we have allocated in the 4.5 years of PPP government. In the period just that. So that's one fact which they can't run away from. We did it through a bidding process. You had to express interest, you had to go through a public process expressing interest. We did it at a rate that was equal for everyone. The $30 million was every single person who acquired or company who acquired land there for housing development through a public open process. They did so at the same rate. So Ed Ahmad did not get a preferential rate. We established further that none of these people, none of the developers had received title to the land. Unlike Apnu, without even paying, they received title, which is illegal, in fact criminal. that to receive title, you had about 18 months to go through a number of conditions you had to fulfill, including not just paying $30 million per acre. So you have to pay about $900 million for a 30-acre plot. But you had to put in infrastructure maybe of a comparable value, another $900 million, and demonstrate, I think, 80% compliance before you get the title, or the government is not obligated to pass title to you. So we have safeguards. We're safeguarding the government. So not a single person has received title there. Ed Ahmad was not treated preferentially. They used to say he's pro-PPP. I dealt with that too. So that's clear. Then the duplicity of it all, which he's trying to get away from, is that he was the lawyer for the firm that got 20 acres at $26 million in the same area, in fact, in a more prime area than any of these people got. $26 million per acre. He was a lawyer. He said, oh, I was not party to that. He was a lawyer. He knew. He was part of the discussion. So imagine the evil, lying nature of this person. He goes to question a person getting it at $30 million an acre without title pass. They have to make a lot more investment. When you know that you took one of your clients and got it at 26 million and got the title passed immediately without any improvement to the project, the area. It is that I was pointing out, that he knew that. And then further, he was the company secretary and a director for another company that got 10 acres of land in the same area just by Earl's Court at $10 million per acre. Just in that area, and they were supposed to put up a 72 apartment building for housing. You didn't even see groundbreaking for that as yet. And he had duty now, because as an officer of the company, you made that commitment too. That's the company that got the land. He was a part of the company that got the land for 10 million per acre, and they made a commitment to put up a 72 apartment building, and nothing ever happened in the same area. Imagine knowing that, and then you go and question how a person going to buy land for 30 million per acre, and they haven't even gotten the land as yet. They have to develop it before they get it. That is what I was questioning. It is his duplicity. We keep missing it. He comes up all the time. Oh, I don't mind being investigated because that's pushes the issue down the line. I want another comprehensive inquiry for land. He wouldn't touch those things. Oh, I can't speak about these matters, client confidentiality. The same bullshit he gives us with Exxon, his contract with Exxon. He's on the payroll. Oh, I can't. I'm separating myself, but he appears on their behalf. That is what I was questioning. So all of that got lost, and they said, we are deflecting. We came out, we explained how the land in the area, what we have done. We issued the documents. You can see the contract, a massive contract that each developer has to sign. And we pointed this out. Oh, we are deflecting from Ed Ahmad. Who is deflecting? He is. He does this all the time. So forget that now. Then the land now, the jungle land. So I saw he repeat the land had bush at his press conference. The land had a lot of bush. So his new criteria for collecting land now, any land you see have bush on it, you just go and take it. It belongs to you. Once it got bush on it anywhere in this country, or it's part of the jungle, so what? It's bushland. That's it. Take it. So the second point he made, that was the first point I had to address, the duplicitous nature of price for land. The point about pausing in an election year. I pointed out that this man got 75 acres of land in a period when the CCJ, after the CCJ had already ruled that the government is in a caretaker mode. You can't sell lands, you can't do anything else, you can't issue lands. Lands and surveys should not have done that. You can't do that as a caretaker government. He wants us now, we're a government with full powers up to the elections, and wants us to pause because it's election year. But he got 75 acres of land when the government was in a caretaker mode. They should not have processed anything for any land whatsoever, much less for this man himself who just mentioned this. But they did. And he was part of what I consider to be a illegal behavior on the government. So the first 25 acres after the CCJ rule and before the elections, and then 50 acres after the elections itself. So now you lose the elections and they're still processing land. They're still processing land. So guess what excuse he came up with? Oh, first of all, it's Bush. Second, it's not the legality of it. It's not the duplicity. Everybody misses that. Oh, it's some small thing that's in the jungle. So what? It is the principle that I'm getting at. So, I bought it from someone in 2016. Now, the guy couldn't sell it to him because the guy did not have title to it. They said the guy was squatting on 2 acres, but he bought 50 acres. How can you sell something that you don't have title for or a lease for? The man never had a lease for the land. Now, Nigel Lewis can't be so stupid to think that you could sell something that you don't own or don't have any rights to. So people question, it was since 2016 he bought the land. Why did he wait until after the elections to process it? Since he said it's just a transfer. And the reason is because he knew all along that the guy couldn't transfer the land. He couldn't. But what changed when we won the elections? He decided that I better do a hustle here. It's a hustle. And got it. The guy had no land to transfer, nothing. Nigel Lewis could not have bought what nobody had to sell. And he was issued with a provisional lease. And now he's complaining, I didn't get the final lease, etc. He has rights to the land. Look at the provisional lease that I released. It gave him rights by a government that had already fallen to 50 acres of land. It's not whether it's jungle lands or whatever. It's the principle. He did it knowing that they had to make the final hustle, I think. That is how I see it, in my view. Because you couldn't transfer what the guy didn't own. And he clouds this in all of this. And so Kaichor News says, misleads nation that the AFC leader had acquired the lands. He had acquired the lands. And the jungle lands, they missed the whole thing. It's not just jungle lands. They forgot the 10 acres at prime land at 10 million per acre and the 20 at 26 million per acre. Not to mention of that he negotiated for his client. It is an attempt every day to whitewash the illegalities and the transgressions of these people who now have the high moral standards. Imagine Nigel Lewis lectures to us, election year, please don't do this. This is how it works around the world. Not that it works anywhere in the world. And then you were busy trying to transfer lands that you knew could not be transferred to yourself because you had no rights to those lands after the elections that already taken place. It's just illegal behavior. I'm going to end here. I think that I gone long enough. Did he? Yes, please.
Is it on? Okay. Svetlana Marshall from News Source.
Yes, John.
Mr. Jagdeo, you spoke about the energy conference. Yesterday, the government consultant, Winston Brassington, said that the gas to energy project at Wales would likely be delayed even further, hinting at a 2026 completion date. What are the financial implications for such extensive delays? And still on gas, what's the rationale behind building a second gas to energy plant simultaneously with the first? Why not ensure that the first is completed and operational and then move on to a second? And would government be seeking external financing for the second project? On the cash grant, the second phase of the $100,000 cash grant got off to quite a chaotic start in certain sections, with a number of allegations of checks being issued to the wrong person or persons. What is being done to address these issues? I took note of your comment in future utilizing financial applications and so forth, but what would be done now to address that? The issue of US deportation policy, could you say if the government has been briefed on the number of Guyanese who are living in the US illegally, and what are, on the number of, sorry, could you say if the government have been briefed on the number of Guyanese who are living in the US illegally with respect to how many are likely to be deported, and how soon could we see those Guyanese returning home, and with respect to accepting deportees from third-party countries, how many, if any, of those deportees the government is prepared to accept, and from where, and what are the implications of such a decision?
Yes, go on.
Thank you. Before I move on to my other topic on the cash grant, there are persons who may have been able to register for the cash grant, but probably left the jurisdiction or sick, or for some reason unable to uplift the cash grant or the check. Would they be able to authorize somebody to uplift that check? We see the former U.S. Secretary of State, Mr. Mike Pompeo, here in Guyana, I think for a third time since demitting office. I could be wrong, but could you tell us about the discussions the government is having with Mr. Pompeo? And lastly, on the engineers bill, it is a legislation that it is needed. However, why the decision to withdraw the proposed bill, and not send it to a select committee? As in the case of the single window legislation that was sent to a select committee. Those for now.
All right. So the last one, I had a discussion with the president, and I'm aware that he had himself expressed some concerns about the provisions of the bill. We believe that it was prematurely tabled. I'm going to say that it was prematurely tabled. It had nothing to do with the opposition concerns. That is why we remove from the order paper, the bill from the order paper. We believe that it should be dealt with in greater detail and reflect the complexity of the situation here. We want a bill that would enhance quality, but would not become a humbug for people practicing their craft. And so that was the simple reason. The president himself, long before this matter came up, expressed some concern about that. But I think it may have been tabled before those concerns were expressed. No, because we believe that we should put a good draft, even if it has to go to select committee, that reflects the executive views first before to try to negotiate a position in select committee, which often is a long drawn out process. We could probably get that done faster. On the Mike Pompeo matter, he came to address the energy conference, and he has, Mike Pompeo has great global connections, and we often benefit from his advice on those matters, and also we share what's going on in the country. So I think he is invested in seeing success here. He had a crucial role to play as U.S. Secretary of State, and we believe we should be part of engaging the U.S. more. I'm aware that President Ali is in discussion with Marco Rubio, has invited Marco Rubio down to Guyana too. We're hoping he'd come and come soon. So we can continue to grow the relationship we have with the US government. It's an important partner. So on the question of how many persons are going to be deported. So we have made it clear that whatever the number is, once they are Guyanese, we'd welcome our people home. We have not gotten any final numbers from the US as to how many people will be deported, but the people who are deported by the US government, which is their decision in full, will be accepted home. These are our people. We have to accept them home. In terms of how many from third party will come to Guyana, there's no agreement on anyone from third party coming to Guyana. There's no such agreement. On the matter of the checks and the cash grant, so I've been out for a while. I just was checking my phone. I spoke with the Secretary to the Treasury before I came here, and I asked him to give me a report. So this is what he sent. So far, he has these numbers. Let me just give you the numbers. So the checks printed for region 1, 19,800, 15,700. I'm rounding up, right? I'm rounding up. 700 being distributed. 31,000 for region 2, 26,000 distributed. 87,000 for 3, 33,000 distributed. 229,000 for 4. They have 19,000 here, but when you look at the public service, so this excludes people in the public service, which is another 50-something thousand, etc. Then region 5, 36,000, 16,000 distributed. That's region 5. Region 6, 74,000, 32,000 distributed. 7, 14,000, 11,000 distributed. 8, 7,000, 9, 4,007. 9, 16,000, 11,700 distributed. 10, 27,800, 10,900 distributed. So they have 545,000 printed, about 100, over 200,000 distributed when you add down plus the public servants. So that's where they are. This doesn't deal with their registration. I may have the numbers here, but I don't want to go into that now. It's a long report here that I have. So the ministries have instruction, the Ministry of Finance, to simplify this. We're getting some confusion at different places because people registered. So many of them registered. So they have to verify and then print the checks. So the numbers registered may not be the same number of checks printed because they go through a verification before that. But with a view to accelerate distribution, so take, for example, if they go to my village, Unity, and say 100 persons registered, they've been able to verify 75, so they'll print 75 checks. But we want to distribute now. We don't want to wait on the 25 orders to be printed and verified, so you can accelerate it. When they start distributing, the word gets around, they're distributing the checks. So the 25 orders may show up too, but their checks are not there because they have not been verified. So they're getting that problem. So this is something we have to be better with. I don't know how, because you can't get to each home to call people to say, like if it's a big community, 2,000-3,000 people, to call everyone and say, your check is not ready as yet for the 10 or 20% that may not be ready. Please don't come. So people end up showing up there, and then they find out, they're waiting, and they find out, oh, my check is not printed. They will get it. They will get it, but it just creates sometimes confusion. That is a problem that we are encountering. So the ministry has to improve on this. Ashni Singh has to take this personally and deal with it. Now that the budget is over and his staff can focus full time on this, that they have to pay more attention to this. We want to get it out as quickly as possible. And with the least confusion, there has been some confusion, but it's dictated by those sorts of things. Now, if your check is cut, we did not want to do this authorization, because we said only people who come home and register, and they have to collect their checks in person. I don't know what we're doing. We started doing shut-ins and stuff like that. So if you can't come and collect your check, eventually you will get your check to you once you're living in Ghana. If you go abroad, that's a different matter. When you come home, your check will be there. But we may not want to go for authorization. Then someone told me, I think I saw a note from Mosley, saying that people register with their passports, and they were told that they can't go with an ID to collect it. Now, I have to find out why that is so. These little things, and sometimes when you have a large number of people doing this, people bring their own views as to what should happen. It's the same reason why we don't want biometrics to be decided by 3,000 polling agents who can then decide who will vote and who wouldn't vote based on their own interpretation of the law and biometrics. If you give people that authority, they then act, each person can act differently. The man at Makkah might behave differently than the one at Diamond or in Port Morant. He may say, this is my understanding of it. And that's not the government's understanding. They bring their own interpretation. So I said to the staff, you have to clarify all of these things. You have to make sure, talk to people over and over. They said we train people, but sometimes they do the same thing on the ground. And some people are sour, they go out, leave long lines. We put them in place there, then they leave for lunch and don't come back until 2-3 hours later. And I know people are just waiting there. So we're encountering all of these issues. And so you may be right that in some places it's going well, where people are conscientious, and in other places where they're not, it is creating problems. On the authorization, I don't think at this stage. I don't know how they're dealing with it. I'm out of the loop for a bit on this, so I will try to find out if they're dealing with that. On the gas to energy project, yes, there will be some delay. I can't speak about the DAR process because it has to remain confidential, and we're making that decision whether we go to full arbitration, which should be made shortly because it has to be made before the end of this month. So if we go on to arbitration, we'll inform the public, or if we decide to accept the DAB report, we will. The delay, we're not going to compromise national interests simply because we want the project to be done by a particular date. So we're not going to roll over and just say, yes, we're going to accept everything because we want this to happen. Let me tell you that. If people don't know that, that's a signal I'm sending to them about the PPP. So whenever this project, it will be completed and it would yield phenomenal benefits for Guyana. It's going to be completed. And as you heard what I said before, if it's delayed a bit, we'll explain it to the people of the country. They'll understand it. The project is ongoing. It would yield benefits. And the benefits, I'm sure of what they are. I don't want to go back through that. I dealt with that hundreds of times before. What are the financial implications of it? At this stage, we are not clear about that. It could be limited. We're trying to minimize the financial implications, but every time you have a delay in a project, there is an increased financial implication. For example, you would have to extend the management team, the supervision team, even if the cost of the project doesn't increase to the contractor. But if you have to pay the team supervising them to stay on for a longer period. So any project that is delayed would have those costs associated with them when you have like road projects or any other projects. But right now, I don't want to speak about that, and we will, once we settle the DAR process or move on to the arbitration, we may be able to talk a bit more about that. Why are we planning for the next project now? Because in Guyana's case, we've already seen the demand profile and the growth in the demand profile. In the LCDS, we publish a demand profile. In GPL now, they have a more conservative demand profile than the LCDS. Read the LCDS. They have a more conservative demand profile. But even if we work with a more conservative demand profile, by the time this project comes on stream, we will need every bit of the 300 megawatts, every bit of it. So remember, a number of people are self-generating. GPL now supplies between 170 and at one stage over 200 megawatts we were putting in the peak period. We estimate that private generation could be another 100 megawatts. If all switch, because it will be cheaper power now, they can't compete. Like if you're generating from a generator, you can't compete with the government cost. It would be like 11 cents per kilowatt hour. And the going cost, if you have to buy fuel now, is 30 cents per kilowatt hour. We are subsidizing it, so it's 22 cents per kilowatt hour because we wanted to keep electricity rate, no change in electricity rate. So we remember, even if you go now to conclude a contract, it's about 2.5 years. That is when the additional gas will come on stream, and that's when the additional power plant will come on stream. We're talking about 2.5 years of growing demand. So even if you switch now, everyone switches over, we practically use up all 300 megawatts. We have 10 hotels. Each hotel may need 2 to 3 megawatts of power on those. If they decide to process bauxite into aluminum, we need probably another 50 megawatts right there. So we will need that. And you have to plan the projects ahead, given their gestation period. That is why you have something called a public sector investment program. APNU's lack of planning for power demand today and no investment in the past has put us in the lurch now. We can't do that to the future of the country. That's why even as we try to get this one completed, we're planning the new production and the new power that will come on stream in the future because of the growing country. We're gonna probably see 40, 50,000 homes built in the next 5-6 years. Each of those will put in air condition, all of that. When you look at the demand profile, it's phenomenal. And that's how you plan for the future. We're not going to be caught like that. When they killed the Myla that should have come on stream in 2017, there was no replacement. If they had said, all right, we're not going to the Myla, but here is how we're going to bring 165 megawatts of new power into the system to take care of what we're not getting from a Myla, we wouldn't have had this situation now. But kill the Myla and there was nothing, no replacement. So we ended up having to struggle with the old equipment until now. So that is why we decided to start looking at the new project. You heard also that to operate the power plant, we want to give a management contract, O&M. So we went out to a public tender. The turbines are Siemens. Well, no, Siemens is a global company. So we had defined what kind of turbines we want. We didn't want cheap turbines. We wanted some of the best turbines in the world. So we said, regardless of who the contract is, you have to either use Siemens or GE turbines. These are US or German turbines, because we want good quality project. The contractors bought Siemens turbine. Now, we put out a RFP, and the Siemens group, the Latin American group, now they were ranked number 1. So we're now negotiating with them because we want them to, if we conclude a contract, they will run the power plant for 10 years or so. So we don't have the headache of operating and maintenance of the plant. You can get the company that produced the turbine to actually do it. And they're a big global company. And now we've gone out for an RFP to manage the NGL facility. That's the liquids, the cooking gas, and all of that, to manage that plant. So then we can swiftly move to start supplying the local market and exporting with the excess LPG that we have, the cooking gas that we have. So we're planning full steam ahead for the project. Might be delayed a bit. It will come on stream. It might be with a delay, but it is happening. It is happening. And I'm pleased about that. And we're planning for the future too. So yes, please go on.
Internal financing for the second project?
No, we are, that's why we said we want to go to a power purchase agreement. But we, knowing the numbers we have, that not paying for the gas now, right? We don't pay for the gas. We are going to generate power between 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. So if they have to pay for the additional gas, we've set a range. So knowing what the numbers are. So we believe we can get a power purchase agreement with a company making all the investments, taking all the risks for the second power plant, and still get the power at a price where we can sell it at 11 cents per kilowatt hour, the additional 300, and still make money on that part too. So that is how we are approaching this.
And my final clarification, with respect to the persons who are claiming that the checks were issued to the wrong person, at least
I don't know about that. If you please get me one case. Just get me a case, and then I can investigate it. If you say a check was cut for someone and issued to another person, because one time someone said that to me, a reporter actually. And when I checked it out, the person said, "Oh, I'm now in this system. I'm now registered. I had to go 2, 3 times." And then I asked finance, and they said, "Yes, the person is registered and was registered a while back." And they sent me the screenshot of the registration in the system. So sometimes people get that. But if you give me just the name and I can verify it, and if it was issued, then we have a problem. We have to fix it. So I would want them to build safeguards in the system to ensure that this doesn't happen. But please get it to me, just the case. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice President Jagdeo. Rihanna, Kaiser News. I just have a quick follow-up to my colleague's question earlier on Mr. Pompeo. You mentioned him in the capacity of you strengthening your relationship with the U.S. and
No,
so-
I said we are looking to strengthen relationship with the U.S., but Pompeo was a former U.S. Secretary of State. So, although he's not part of the administration, but he played a role in Guyana. So we're very happy for that, the role he played, and also his continuing engagement. When you're an official of the U.S. at that level, you have unbelievable insight into many global issues that people don't see from a small country perspective, that can be useful to us in our framework for analyzing the world and planning the prosperity of Guyana, that you have to benefit from all of these insights. It's an extremely complex world, and you have to navigate it in a nuanced way. And it's invaluable for a country like Guyana to be able to benefit, have that kind of engagement, to sit down with a former US Secretary of State who is willing to share his knowledge, understanding different markets, different regions of the world. We are increasingly becoming a major player because of the oil and gas production. And so you need to understand that. So I spoke about the engagement with Rubio as part of the strengthening, but we're extremely...
Okay, so basically his role here is in an advisory capacity.
No. He has no formal advisory role. I made that clear. I said, we're benefiting from interaction. We like to talk to people who are knowledgeable.
Okay, sir.
Well, I think I don't speak much to
relation to
some
the
people. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the 20% Stabroek block relinquishment. The last update we received last year was that the process to do so has not been completed. Can you give an update and
I think
perhaps
that was
say
asked
what
of
is
Alistair Rutledge, and he said,
causing the delay?
well, yeah, the ministry is dealing with that. Please contact them. I don't want to be, they wrote Exxon. I think they reached some agreement. I saw it in my brief. They need to go forward. They need to move forward.
Well, I have a follow-up in relation to that. Could you say if the delay of the relinquishment could possibly affect our oil profits in terms of how much we're getting? And would you say if the company would be able to recover costs as a result of not being able to give back this?
I don't want to be unkind, but you know that's a nonsensical question. If you have a block here and you have to relinquish part of it, you will choose the part that you're not using. So that's what you give up, that you're not doing anything in. So how would that affect your cost?
We don't know that, sir.
So yeah, let's go on to another question.
We don't know that, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Chennai Williams from Kaiser News. I have two questions for you.
Yeah.
So Suriname is allowing their citizens in.
Go on. Just
Hi.
move aside. Let me see. Yeah, go on.
Okay, Suriname is allowing their citizens to invest in its first oil project. What are your thoughts on this? And can you see this initiative as something that can be introduced in Guyana? And a follow-up in terms of the Mucka squatters that lost their court case, President Ali had extended a helping hand to them. Can you say or give details as to what type of help these persons will benefit from and when?
Okay. Yeah, you said 3 or 2. All right. So I would assume that the help that we gave the others, that we'd want to extend to these individuals too. I'd assume that that is what the president meant when he said, we're not going to leave people on the road because of bad advice, even if they're PNC people. It's not in our DNA to do that. And so I assume that's the same benefit that they will get. They're not going to get more than the other people, but this is clear. um, Suriname is taking a different approach. They have an option in their project development to take equity in the project. So when you take equity in a project, you have to raise the money. So at the national level, given the constraints that Suriname has now, I think there is a limit to its borrowing because of the state of the financing in Suriname. So it has to raise money. The fact that it's trying to do so through a vehicle that allows citizens a chance to participate, it's a good thing. And but there is, people have to understand how finances work. If you take equity in a project, then you have the possibility of getting a great reward at the end. But remember, equity is remunerated only after you clear costs, including costs of borrowing. So for example, we were discussing this only 2 days ago. We're thinking about some of the other things. Say, if we build a fertilizer plant in Guyana, maybe we can have people take equity in the project, or they can invest in the project through a bond, Guyanese, or one of the, say, the vessels supplying offshore. So if we can structure some of those in a way that provides multiple opportunities to Guyanese, because the service boats are needed now. There are about 20 of them there. And when we get up to high levels of production, about 40 of those, and they have guaranteed contracts. So assuming you try to get Guyanese to take some of their money out of the bank and put it into these opportunities. If you invest in a bond, you know the bond will state the rate. You will get 10% per year. Might be higher than the interest rate you're getting in the bank. But you know you're getting that definitely, because that is paid in the first order. It's above the line. It's part of the cost of the project. If you invest in equity now, you take ownership of the project, you buy a share, you have to wait until all those costs are clear. And then you have to decide whatever the profit is. So if you don't make profit in a year, assuming, say, oil prices tank, and you don't make profit in a year, you're not getting a return on your equity investment because it's remunerated only from profits. So people, this is why we need to do much more work on financial literacy. So things sound good, but you also have to look at how you manage your money. And I hope that we can do some seminars along this line, maybe finance, talking to people, because you saw the deposits in our banking system soar. Our aggregate deposits, Ashton Singh said it's $1 billion now, $1 trillion. So Guyanese are not investing, saving more because they're earning more. I made the point that only from government alone, government workers are earning 500 million US dollars per year more than they were earning in 2020, because our increase in wages and salaries in the public sector has grown by $107 billion. So that means they're earning 500 million US dollars more. So they're saving more. So people now want to think about not just keeping my money in a saving account. How will I invest it so I can make more? They may not be able to do a project, but they can take either equity or subscribe to bonds, debt instruments. And so even if you look at the structure of the Berbice Bridge, NIS and the others, they took more money on the bond side, so they got paid. That's why it's the best investment NIS made, because they took a higher share of their injection in bonds and subordinate debt, which are ranked higher than equity or common shares. So it's only when you make profit, then you get your common shares are remunerated. So I think whilst it's a laudable thing, they have to raise a lot of money. Let's see how it's going to be subscribed in Suriname. But you also have to tell people of that risk, that when you put your money, an ordinary person, you're dependent on what happens with the oil and gas sector in the future. You may not get back any return if the project doesn't do well, versus investing in a bond. And that's how I see it. Yes, please.
Saskia Warwick, NCN News. Dr. Jagdeo, a few weeks ago you mentioned plans to meet with GCOM. Could you share how that meeting went?
I didn't get that.
A few weeks ago you mentioned plans to meet with GCOM. Could you share?
Yes. I was out the country and I came back and I had to ask GCOM to postpone the meeting. So I have not met with them.
Okay.
I will meet with them shortly. I'll request another meeting.
Okay. Sir, regarding recent collapse of concrete poles along Homestretch Avenue, I noticed the lack of a concrete base. Have you engaged GPL on this issue, particularly regarding the quality of installation, considering these poles are being installed nationwide? And
From
third,
the time I saw this, I spoke. So I had, after the issue that took place in Aubrey Barker Road, I asked them about the protocols. What are the protocols for putting down concrete posts? So they said 10% of the posts plus 2 feet. But they didn't have a concrete base. That's GPL's protocol. 10% plus 2 feet. The other one, the one in Aubrey Barker Road, they didn't install it at spec. They told me these were installed at spec, but you will have to look at the conditions in which you install these. And we're clear, we have a high water table. These are heavy posts. So I said to them, and I mentioned here that they had to work on the protocol. So they told me the protocol has been established, which now will put concrete base. So when you put the post down 10 feet, maybe 2, you have to encase it in concrete. But that was not the protocol when this was installed, because this only happened a few weeks ago. You should catch Edgehill and Indar a bit more and ask them about these, and GPL. Ask them about the protocol, because I've been pushing for them to get it. It's irksome. It's when I see this stuff happening. I came in from the East Bank And we have a project now. I see the heavy traffic there. This project is about almost 8 months old to widen the road about 8 feet from around the stadium, all the way, just a little past the stadium, all the way to the airport and resurface it. The road is in a bad shape because of the heavy pounding every day, a lot of vehicles coming down the trucks and stuff. Whilst we are building parallel to that, the 4-lane highway, we're awarded contracts up to Garden of Eden now, and then we're going to soon award to get you to the Sioux Lake Highway. So I came there, I'm checking now, and I'm looking at how much of the work is done. I'm driving down, and I see about 100 meters of concrete drains and very little else. And then I saw some work being done again in the area where, just the area that where we were bypassing Diamond, the Grove area, that's always narrow and congested. And they're just digging up leisurely there in the middle of the day and morning, and thousands of people get disadvantaged. People have to, some engineers who believe that they're little gods. They go on the ground, they dig up everything. They just don't care about people utilizing these roads. And this has to stop. They have to have proper management. I know there will be some discomfort because if we are building roads, people will understand that. But it has to be properly managed. The same thing happened on the East Coast, the dust in people, they're digging up, just leaving the stuff there, leaving incomplete work for weeks, and just have to pave over a little piece and reopen the road. They've done that everywhere. Now, I understand the country is a construction site and we can't slow down because we need it. We need all of this happening quickly. We're growing so fast. But this is something I'm very, very concerned about, how it affects people. So on that matter, I would love if you corner the agencies, put them on the spot too. Some of the GPL and the others, call them and ask them how you were installing posts that are falling down. Because often we as politicians, we have to take the heat for everything. Anytime they do a shoddy job there, we don't even know how deep they're putting down the damn thing. And we got to take the heat all the time. So I would love if people mount some heat on these technical people and put their faces to the people who approved it.
And lastly, sir, there have been a lot of inquiries about when the 8% for public servants is going to be applied in 2025.
Right. You're going to get your 8%
Is
there.
it going to be December, or could we expect it before?
Well, I hope it's before the elections as General Secretary of the party. I don't want it to wait until December. But we haven't decided as yet that as General Secretary, I'm hoping you get an early payout because that's agreed. So, is there anything?
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Mikhail Rodriguez for the Daybreak News. 3 questions. Earlier today, the Guyana Revenue Authority issued a statement following up to a social media post from T. Mohammed's in relation to T. Mohammed's posting about taxes paid and it not being factual. Will the government be looking at GRA now in light of the fact that GRA has shown that some amount of taxes were paid short, some $300 million, and how is the government going to be looking at GRA now to be dealing with these issues?
Yeah, you said you had 3 questions. You want to go on?
Secondly, does the government have any worry as a result of its inactions to address the Mohammeds who are sanctioned but are moving around the country freely? Does the government have any worry that its supporters are assuming that this is sanctioned by the PPP, since the Mohammeds would have had a fairly good relationship with the PPP in the past. Is your government worried that your inaction to address the Mohammeds and their sanctions publicly gives a message of, you know, maybe he's acting on behalf of the government?
Yeah, and the third question.
And has your budget been able to create a favorable environment for all media houses as it relates to ads and the positioning of ads with all media houses?
So I don't like to comment on tax matters. You'd recall Crybaby Campbell, who thinks that everybody is persecuting him. He's looking for attention. When he spoke about me not paying taxes and some other groups of Guyanese not paying taxes, he identified them, and somebody released that he got $138 million of write-off, and that one of his claims is that his company was bankrupt and he couldn't pay the taxes, including keeping people's VAT money that they had already paid. He then ran off and said, oh, we're persecuting him. He mentioned it in the public domain. He brought taxes in the public domain. The document surfaced, and then he complained that he's being persecuted. So the same thing here. I looked at the post as Rudin Mohammed, because I don't think Team Mohammed or whatever that is owes taxes. It's an individual who made that post, and he put in the post a number of vehicles and how much taxes he paid. So clearly, now that we've looked at it, I'm surprised to see the figure, because anecdotally, you know, if you have to bring in vehicles above a certain level, considered luxury vehicles in Guyana with high cylinder capacity, the combined taxes are about 2.5 times the declared value of a vehicle. So if one of the vehicles costs $700,000 US, then you have to multiply that by 2.5 to come up with what the taxes would be. But if you paid 98 million for 3 vehicles, which is not even one time the acquisition cost. So he did this in an unsolicited manner. So I hope that now that the GRA has dealt with it, that there is no claim that there is persecution. It originated the GRA. I have the GRA note. The GRA made it clear that they looked at this post, they checked their records, and the release is quite clear from the GRA. So I hope that when people talk publicly about their tax matters, they know that there is a GRA that's looking on. And the GRA has even spoken about whistleblowers, that there's a reward for whistleblowers. Not that we have a police state, but you don't mess with the tax authorities. You don't mess with tax authorities. We didn't know that Terrence Campbell got 138 million of write-off. It took place under us because the law authorizes the GRA to do that. We discovered it when the document came in the public domain. So I hope that there's no claim of persecution like Crybaby Campbell. And right, that is they come up with these things, and then when they get rebutted, they go off and sulk in the corner and like crybabies. So
In addition to producing evidence that he participated in tax fraud, obviously GRA will have some part in it. How is the government going to be looking at
well,
GRA?
we're going to look for an explanation from GRA. I saw it surfaced, and a number of people been raising this in the public domain, so I think it got to the GRA's attention. But anecdotally, everybody knows what I just explained, that we focus on reducing taxes for the smaller vehicles. A lot of those have been reduced because more people can afford those. So the view was that if you could afford a luxury vehicle, by all means buy it. It's your money, you buy whatever you want. Once you pay your taxes, you can drive whatever you want. It's a free country, and you can do it, but pay your appropriate taxes. We focus a lot on the lower end where we remove a lot of the taxes or lessen the taxes because we want more people to afford vehicles there. Like, young professionals and the others can't afford a multi-million-dollar vehicle like US dollar vehicle. So that's it. So the right of every Guyanese to own whatever they want should not be questioned. You just have to pay the right taxes. Now, we have made it clear the US government has issued sanctions on the Mohammeds, and they said that the banks and anybody who is associated with them run the risk of facing sanctions. And I'm aware that a lot of people have had their visas withdrawn because of association. So fairly large numbers of people. So that's a fact. But we don't run a police state, and the Mohammeds are entitled to due process too. And we don't have, people are free to travel any part of this country wherever they want to travel, including the Mohammeds, and they can meet whomever they want to meet. That is their constitutional right, and the PPP will not infringe on their right to do so just to prove a point politically. They will protect people's rights. Whether people choose to associate with them or not, that's a different matter, but they should have a right to move freely and to associate with whomever they wish. Politically, we now worry. We see pictures surfacing and stuff like that, and I will deal with that at the appropriate time. But it's not, we're not going to infringe on people's right. I think a lot of the banks and the others have voluntarily cut their business dealings with the Mohammeds because they're afraid of US sanctions, and because that was very explicit in the report. So that's the position there. On the budget, I expect Minister McCoy, you to have that conversation with Minister McCoy. He's right there at the back, because we need to implement the policy now to get an arrangement where the social media outfits that have large reach should get more ads. They should get more ads. They reach more of our people, and they should get more of the ads than some of the newspapers that don't have any reach. And really, they distort stuff. I I look at the Kaichor news. We practically, you're absolutely right. I didn't check it a long time. I check in some of these things today, and and the paper is filled with government ads. And then in the TIGI report, they said, oh, there have been attacks on journalists. I don't know what attacks. They left it like that, like this government beating up journalists or something like that. In fact, every week the journalists attack me from Kaichor News. I should complain too, the attacks that I'm getting. But I agree with you. We should have more ads going to the social media outfits now, those who have big online presence. Thank you.
Sir,
Yes, please.
Sir, your concerns about poor management of infrastructure projects has gained some mixed reactions. Some are saying it's merely an election gimmick and that it reflects that your government is incompetent. What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, because unpredictably that will come from the opposition. Let me tell you what I said at the beginning. The scale of what we're doing, APNU wouldn't achieve in 100 years. In 100 years to conceptualize and put these together. We, in the health sector alone, we have now 12 new hospitals being constructed, 6 that will be completed this year, several others rehabilitated. We have now practically completed maybe 90% of community roads when all were in disrepair in 4 years, in 4.5 years. That's a phenomenal amount of work. And had we not enlisted many small contractors and assisted them to move along, so we had to define the project, we had to get people to do the work, and to do that, we had to bring in new contractors and provide greater equity and balance and get more people from different ethnicities involved so they all share the prosperity there. It's purely phenomenal. Remember, APNU is opposed to this. They said no money on don't spend money on infrastructure, don't use it all up. But we've done that too. So if you look at the gas to energy project is another one. We now have 400 bridges under construction across the country. 400 bridges, including the 2 big ones. When you look at the scale in the Amerindian communities, the schools, Sororo, Quebana, in Carasabai, all over the country, we will get, in some areas, shoddy work. But the bulk of it, 95% are done well, and they're going to serve the people. So we are not going to self-flagellate, because some people, it's not an act of self-flagellation or because of election. We will criticize those that are not done. You notice, I didn't criticize the project. We have a project to expand the road from the stadium to the airport and to pave the Linden-Soosdijk Highway, or to do the East Coast Road, the 4-lane road. I'm speaking about the management of the project, because in some cases it's done well, and in other cases it's slipshod. And I'm not going to muzzle myself as general secretary of this party too, because people come to me here, so I'm vice president, but also general secretary of the party, because when they have a dust problem, they show up at Freedom House. They have a dust problem, they show up here. Any problem they have, they show up here. And I have a duty to represent them too, publicly, and I will do so privately. I call the minister and say, what's going on there? I was at Better Hope, the people complain about dust there. So So I can't replace the EPA, but I have a duty to people too. And I'm not one of those type of politicians who will come and listen to people and do nothing about it. So it's not for APNU. This sounds like electioneering because they're only concerned about people in election year. For me, I live it every day from the first day we got into office in 2020 to now. It's a concern. If somebody brings something to our attention, we try to fix it. So we, based on what we are doing, inevitably, we're going to have some shoddy work in few cases. We're going to have some corruption. I've spoken about this many times before. You have some people. I was saying yesterday that even whilst we are sitting here now, someone could be soliciting a bribe and we don't even know about it. But do we stop everything because of that fear? APNU didn't do anything, and it was the most corrupt government. They didn't build many projects. The few that they built, 600 million missing from the Durban Park monument to their incompetence and corruption. So I don't have any apology, but we'll keep speaking about things that we see going wrong. Every week I do it. When I come down the road, I don't just sit in my vehicle. I passed Vicention Road, I saw a bus shed fall in the trench. And it's been there for like a week, nobody picking it up. So I called Public Works and said, why there's a bus shed in the trench? You have to get your engineers to fix it. So it's not like because I'm worried it would affect us politically. I just think it's bad management. You drive down the road, you should see things that are wrong. If there's a bridge and it's bad, it's not fixed properly, hundreds of people have to pass there every day. You have some engineers who will drive up and down, they're responsible for it, and don't feel anything, they don't care. But that's the nature of how we operate. Okay? Thank you very much.